Over the past few months, there's been a lot of rumors about iOS 19 looking a lot different. We've heard that for the first time in over a decade, Apple was planning another major visual overhaul to the iPhone, similar to what they did back in 2013 with iOS 7. And well, we just got confirmation that this is actually happening this year. So today I want to show you your first look at iOS 19, as well as some confirmed leaks and other rumors for what could be one of Apple's biggest updates ever. Okay, but first, how do we actually know that iOS 19 is going to look like this? Well, Apple recently sent out invites for their next event happening on Monday, June 9th. This is their annual WWDC Worldwide Developer Conference, where they show off their new software platforms each and every year. But what makes this year special is the way the invitation looks. See, in the main part of the invite, we just have some rainbow text, but at the bottom, the 25 looks quite a bit different. It's glassy and frosted, and it sure looks a lot like the software on Apple's $3,500 Vision Pro headset, which countless rumors now have said will be Apple's basis for the design of iOS 19 too. So with Apple showing this off front and center, everything they do is intentional. They've seen the same rumors and leaks that we have, and the fact that they are choosing to lean into this shows that this is the direction that they are planning to head in 2025. Still though, the big question remains, what will this design language actually look like on the iPhone? Because keep in mind, visionOS is a 3D operating system, where on the iPhone, you're going to be looking at this in 2 dimensions. Well, recently there's been a massive iOS 19 leak where we have straight up seen different parts of the operating system, starting off with the new lock screen. Right away at the bottom, you can see a new style for notifications where you've got that sense of depth with that shine effect placed across the bottom. And then when you go to the home screen, you see the same thing not only on the app icons, but also on your widgets. Interestingly, in this leak of iOS 19, the app icons still are their rounded rectangle shape, but I'm not actually convinced that this is the final look, and more on that in a second. Still, we can see all the different elements that Apple plans on updating. Here's what a pop-up is going to look like in iOS 19, featuring that same sheen across the other elements, giving you a way greater sense of depth between what is in the foreground and the background. There's also a similar vibe with the iOS 19 keyboard, which is now rounded in the corners up at the top, and all of the keys seem to have a bit of an additional layer of blur behind them, although it's kind of hard to see in this mock-up of the Messages app. Go out to your Conversations view, and you can see that Apple plans on updating smaller elements too, like in the top left and right hand corners. These have the exact look of buttons from visionOS that appear to be way more tactile and alive than the super bland and flat boring buttons we have had for years. Maybe one of the most striking changes is the redesigned Apple TV app that they've been working on, with a new layout for your shows and what you're watching, but most importantly, a new tab bar at the bottom that no longer takes up your entire display, but just kind of floats along the bottom of the screen. Although, in looking at all of this together, is this really the iOS 19 major redesign? Because I'm just gonna say it still kind of looks the same. The home screen is the same, the lock screen is the same, and sure, elements of apps are a bit more shiny, but even individually, they barely look different. And now we know why. What I just showed you is not the full final leak of iOS 19. It's actually a months old look at iOS 19 when Apple was just starting to work on things. How do we know this is the case? Well, just take a look at this leaked screenshot from iOS 7 that came out months before Apple unveiled that. It looks totally different than the end product of the home screen and the icons that Apple ended up unveiling publicly. Basically, this leak is an alpha version of iOS 19 where Apple was just starting to play around with what they wanted it to change, and the final version is going to look way more polished and probably a lot different in most ways, potentially with circular icons, with apps being completely redesigned instead of minorly adjusted. But what about all their other products? Would Apple also be updating the design language of iPadOS 19 too? Well, according to a new report, the answer is yes. Apple also has big plans for the iPad this year, giving it these similar design elements and language from visionOS on the iPad too. Personally, I think it's going to make the iPad look so much more modern than the current flat design, and with the iPad still being my favorite place to draw and be creative, it's why I partnered up with Paperlike, who sponsored today's video. Paperlike is the original screen protector for iPad that makes writing and drawing feel just like paper. And unlike Apple's nano texture finish that only reduces reflectivity, Paperlike gives you the stroke feel and texture of actual paper on your tablet. It makes writing and drawing so much more engaging and ultimately a lot more realistic. Paperlike has achieved this feel with their proprietary nanodots technology, which are microbeads engineered to add resistance and improve haptic feedback when using your Apple Pencil. In my experience taking notes with the Paperlike, I found it it to be so much more accurate and comfortable because it feels like an actual piece of paper and you're not sliding around constantly. Plus, on top of everything else, Paperlike offers a 100-day money-back guarantee. So if for whatever reason you don't love it, you can either get a replacement or your money back. Right now, when you use my link down below in the description, you can grab a Paperlike screen protector for yourself. It is the best way to be creative on the iPad. A huge thank you to them for sponsoring. Now let's get back to it. Now, setting the design aside for a second, we haven't even talked about the new features that Apple has planned for this year because they have quite a lot on their plate that they have to sort through. See, right now Apple's in a tough spot because they still haven't delivered on a number of iOS 18 features that were promised almost a year ago, specifically the all-new version of Siri that could see what was on your screen, use apps for you without you interacting with your screen, or most importantly, understanding your personal contact, something that they have advertised incessantly for months, and something that they recently announced they don't know when it's coming out. So where does that put the features that Apple has planned for iOS 19 if they're not even done with iOS 18? Yeah, initially iOS 19 was rumored to support all the previous Siri stuff and a new large language model Siri that worked just like ChatGPT, where you could ask complex questions and on-device Siri would give you answers instantaneously. But as you might have guessed, with all that other stuff delayed, this new version of Siri has now been pushed to 2026 at the earliest with iOS 20. Although somehow these huge AI misses haven't actually stopped Apple's ambitions, as with iOS 19, we've just learned that there is going to be one big new AI feature, and that's an AI coach in the Health app. Apparently, Apple's planning to launch an entirely new Apple Health Plus subscription service, where using AI and your own personal biometric data, the AI would track what you're up to and then give you recommendations on how to improve your life, in addition to completely redesigning the Health app, which so far has been pretty limited. As part of this big health overhaul, it also seems that Apple will be adding food tracking inside of the Health app to compete with services like MyFitnessPlus to help track your daily calories in and out, giving you a more comprehensive overview of your fitness. Now, on the surface, Health Plus sounds like a great idea, but considering Apple's track record with AI, I can't imagine relying on an AI system to tell me about my health, and specifically the blunders that we've already seen from Apple. Health Plus powered by Apple Intelligence just kind of sounds laughable. That being said, we have heard about 3 new features for iOS 19 that do seem pretty cool. The first is a wild new AI feature for AirPods that enables live translation as you go. For example, if somebody only speaks Spanish and you only speak English, but you both have AirPods in, with iOS 19, they'll be able to talk to you in Spanish, and in real time using on-device processing, you will hear what they said in English. And then when you respond back in English, their AirPods will automatically translate what you said back into Spanish. So you can essentially have a real-time personal conversation without looking at an app or down at Google Translate. I absolutely cannot wait for this. I think it's going to be a massive deal. Next, another new AI feature rumored for iOS 19 is Apple Music playlist generation. So right now, whenever your Apple Music runs out of songs, it just kind of plays the same 10 tracks you've heard in a different order every time. It's a really bad experience, and it really is not helpful to find new music on autoplay. Well, with iOS 19, Apple's going to use AI to learn the music that you listen to and then start recommending tracks that would likely fit in. To me, it kind of sounds like making the Apple Music algorithm more similar to Spotify, which I think is the one area that Spotify by far still excels at. And it also seems like a safe way for Apple to use AI, as we know they've been pretty frightened to implement it in as many areas as their competitors. And speaking of competitors, that's where the third change comes in, is iOS 19 is going to make it way better to text your Android friends. The big update we got last year with iOS 18 was RCS text messaging, where Apple finally supported an iMessage-like standard for over-the-air text for your Android friends. The thing is, when Apple implemented this, it was a really old version of the standard, so a lot of key features were initially missing. Well, with iOS 19, Apple's planning to support RCS 3.0, which will allow you to edit and unsend messages for the first time with Android friends, just like you've been able to do in iMessage. Green bubbles will also now support inline message replies, as well as tapbacks working properly, versus right now they're pretty glitchy. And most importantly, end-to-end encryption for green bubbles is coming. So now every text you send in the Messages app in iOS 19 will be end-to-end encrypted, meaning nobody, including Apple, can access its contents. This is super important and something Apple was criticized for not supporting on Androids for a while, and this year they are finally catching up. Now, these 3 features are just a taste of what Apple is adding in iOS 19, and there are certainly a ton of additional things in the works too, but I would not expect this to be as feature-packed as years prior. I mean, Apple in a lot of ways is playing catch-up this year, and without a doubt, the new Vision OS style design, that is going to be the big draw of iOS 19, as well as Apple's other platforms like iPadOS. And listen, hearing all of this, seeing these initial early leaks for iOS 19, I could not be more excited. WWDC each and every year is my favorite event that Apple throws because it's cool to get all of this through a free software update on your existing device. Previous leaks have already said that iOS 19 will support the exact same devices as iOS 18. So going all the way back to 2018 with the iPhone XS and XR, you're going to be getting almost everything we talked about in this video. The closer we get to WWDC in June, the more it seems that this event is going to be a pivotal moment for the iPhone and a make or break point for where Apple takes the iPhone in the future. So make sure to hit subscribe in case you haven't already for more on iOS 19, and drop a like if you enjoyed this video. It helps me out. I love all of you so much. I have been Sam. I will see you in the next video. I am so excited for iOS 19. It is going to be so good. And I've been waiting for this moment for actually like 10 years. So yeah, more videos to come on iOS 19, more leaks coming. It's going to be great. I'll see you guys later.